Hey there YouTube, what's going on? It's Adam here with Retro Repairs, and today I've got a quick little video I'm going to make just cleaning out something that's a little unusual that you definitely don't run across very often. So, here we have a Colecovision Super Action Controller. These guys were made specifically kind of for some sports games, so Super Action Baseball and Super Action Football come to mind. And as you can see, it's a very, very unusual controller. It's got a big joystick at the top, has the traditional number pad that ColecoVisions would have, but also has these 4 trigger buttons, which evidently have some sort of function depending on the game that you're using. So we're going to test it out, make sure it works, and clean it out if necessary. And there we have Super Action Baseball. Alright, so we're going to try and figure out how to play some baseball using this thing here. So as we can see on the screen here, it gives us some options. Batting, 1 player. You press number 1, I'm guessing, here on this number pad. Number 2, fielding, skill number 1. Number 3, fielding, skill 2. 4, 2 player. Since I'm just me, we're going to try the 1 player. So I think you just hit number 1, and it seems to load it up. So I don't actually know what I'm supposed to do here. I'm just kind of mashing buttons, and the guy's not swinging at all. Apparently, pound symbol is maybe to exit the game. So let's try that again. Spinner does nothing. Oh, swing with the joystick, it looks like. Like, I don't know, I guess you play like this. There we go. But what do the other buttons do? I really have no idea. Let's try number 2. This is fielding practice. So, am I supposed to... Okay. I really have no idea what I'm supposed to do here. Let's try 4. And again, these buttons here don't seem to have done anything so far. So it's possible that some buttons aren't registering something. And now, for some reason, hitting pound does not bring me back. Let's try the other controller. So this is the basic built-in controller right here. The one that comes with everything else, or every other system that you have that you play most other games with. And it swings, so this controls the batter. And this is supposed to control the pitcher, I guess. But we're not getting anything here. So safe to say, perhaps, this controller just needs to be cleaned, especially maybe these buttons, because I suspect they're supposed to do something. So we're going to turn this off, we're going to crack it open, and give this a thorough cleaning. Alright, so Super Action Controller. First thing we'll do is let's try and get this open here. So first thing we want to do, flip it over to the bottom, and you see there's 2 small Phillips screws here. And we're just going to remove both of those and set them aside. So as you can see, or as you will see, I'll show you, the screws are kind of just dirty. This console came out, I think, in 1985, and this was actually these controllers were given to me by a buddy of mine who, I guess his family all bought into ColecoVision back in the 80s, so they had like 3 or 4 of these systems and a whole bunch of controllers, and no one person needs that many controllers or ColecoVision. So he just gave them to me to try out. So looks like the little front cover comes off, which I'm not really sure the purpose of it. Maybe when you get into fights with your friends after some super action baseball. It protects your knuckles, who knows. Anyways, put that aside, and now it looks kind of more like a phaser on Star Trek or something like that. But again, there are a couple more screws to remove here. There's 2 on the handle, and there's 1 here on the top side. So we'll get those out. Okay, so set those aside, and now I think this should just pop apart here. I just want to be careful that I don't break any clips or anything that's holding it together. It feels like there's something right here that I have to separate. Just try and get my finger under there or something. There we go. Alright, so shell is apart. Spread this blanket out a bit. Again, as I mentioned in previous videos, I like to put a towel under my work area here. The reason for that is if I drop any screws or anything like that, they don't go flying and bounce all over the floor and get lost. Kind of helps dampen it a little bit. So, alright, this is what we've got here. So there are 2 boards. One of them controls these little trigger buttons, and the other one is connected by a little connector here to the main board, which again has a ribbon connector to a 3rd board actually, which controls these number pad buttons. So it looks like there's a bunch of screws kind of holding this all together, 2 at the end here and 4 around here, plus 1 in the middle. I think this one in the middle holds the joystick in place, so for now I'm actually going to leave it, but eventually it too will be removed if we have to clean out the joystick area. So it's worth noting, it looks like these screws on the inside are different from the screws which held together the casing, so it's a good idea to keep these separate. I'll show you kind of an example of what I mean here. So this screw came from the inside, which is looks like more of a brass or silvery kind of screw, and the black ones have coarser threads, and they're the ones that hold the plastic shell pieces together. So again, just make a mental note of that. They should be easy enough to distinguish based on their color, but again, just try and make sure that you're putting the proper screws back where they belong. And we've got 2 down here. So it appears that we do have to remove this center screw as well. There is something that's holding the joystick into place on the top half of the shell, so this whole component I think will have to come out. Now this center screw is much longer than the other ones, so again, when you're taking it out, make a mental note of that to yourself, that it has to go back to that same area. Alright, so now we gently fold this over, and you'll see there's a ribbon connector holding these 2 parts together. You got to make sure that we're not damaging that connector. So what I think I'm going to do actually is firstly disconnect the trigger buttons just by pulling apart on this connection, and we're going to set that aside so it's not as bulky to hang on to. Then we're going to unscrew these small 4 screws. So this actually takes a smaller size screwdriver, so I'm going to have to get a more precision bit. Alright, so using my smaller bit, we're going to remove these 4 internal screws. And again, these look like yet another type of screw. So these are much smaller. They have a smaller head. And again, we want to make sure that when it comes time for reassembly that we're putting it back in the proper spot. Okay, now we have it completely disassembled, and we can have a good look at what actually makes this controller work. So first thing we see, there's your standard conductive pads, same as you get on any other type of controller, just they're in a grid design. So these are the ones that will make the number pad actually work. So when you, whoops, I lost that wheel. So these numbers, when you push them, it will actually send a signal, well, not send it, but complete the circuit on this little board. So this board is what receives the signal from the number pad, and it actually looks reasonably clean. If I, get the reflection of the light here, you can see for yourself that it looks pretty good. We're going to give it a bit of a cleanup still, but overall, it's not bad at all. A couple other things that could go wrong on these. You want to look at this guy here. So this is a little plastic adapter, let's say, which controls the joystick. So when you push the joystick to the right, what happens is it will actually send this little piece of metal down and touch the, there we go, see if we can see it here. Pushes this piece of metal down and touches the, let's call it a contact point here. And it makes it either choose right, left, up, down, or diagonal. So it is an 8-way joystick here. One thing that I have heard of happening with these is this will actually break. And unfortunately, if it breaks, there's not really a terrific way to go about fixing that. You have to either find a replacement one of these, which I'm not sure how easy or hard that will be, or you need to somehow repair it. Now, also, another thing to check out is where the spinning wheel sits. So in the wheel is a couple of magnets, and I guess what the magnets do, you'll notice on the board here there's two pieces of wire that run underneath here. The magnet, I'm guessing it will actually draw this piece of wire up when it passes and then release it. So the way it works is I guess in succession it will complete the circuit and release the circuit, and it can determine, I guess based on how fast the circuit is completed and released. By using that, it can determine how fast you're spinning the wheels. So we want to make sure that firstly the magnets are present in this wheel. If there's no magnets, it's not going to work at all. So I'm going to put this piece of the board aside right now. We're not going to need it. And we're going to focus instead on this guy here. So we're going to pop these buttons off. And what we have here is just a standard little switch, basically. So all that switch does is it will complete a circuit inside it and detect that these buttons are hit. So the best way to clean inside these is by using contact cleaner. I'm not going to desolder these from the board and open them up and clean them that way. I would suggest just using contact cleaner to make sure that these switches work as intended. What you can do as a diagnostic test, though, is using a multimeter, you connect these 2 points right here, 1 and 2, and then you just push the switch. If it connects when you push the switch, it means that the switch works. If it doesn't connect and you get no continuity at all, that means that the switch doesn't work. So I'm going to show you an example of it right now. Okay, so I have my multimeter and it's on continuity mode. So when I touch the two probes together, it's going to make a beeping sound. Just like that. If I touch the probes on 2 points in a circuit that is connected, it will make a beeping sound. Just like so. Now when I touch the probe on these 2 points here, it should not beep. The circuit's not connected. If I push the switch, it's not beeping. So could be something wrong with this switch here, I think. I just want to make sure that I'm getting the proper contact point. Yep, I am. So I suspect that there's an issue with this switch right here. I'm going to continue trying it on all of these. I just want to make sure that I'm actually testing it properly. Okay, so this one, when I push the button, it works. When I release the button, there's no continuity. We're going to try it one more time here. So button pushed, no continuity. So this switch right here is clearly not working properly. It needs to be cleaned out. No continuity. Oops. Push the button. And we're getting continuity. So this purple one's okay. And again, we'll try the same thing with the blue. Blue one's okay. So really, the only issue here is this yellow switch. So again, I just want to try it a couple different ways. See if there's, maybe you put pressure on it in one certain way, it will actually work. Doesn't look like it. It looks like it's clearly defective. So there's the one thing that we need to do is get some contact cleaner. We'll spray it into that switch and it should clear that up and make it work properly. As well as a preventative measure, we'll do it on all the other switches as well, just to make sure that in the future one of them doesn't fail if maybe one of them's kind of on their way there. The idea being we want to make sure that this will last a very long time. So I'm going to have to get some contact cleaner. We'll come back and give these switches a thorough cleaning. The rest of the board itself actually looks to be in relatively good shape. I want to give the back of this a bit of a clean. As you can see, there's some grime and stuff on here. It shouldn't really affect the usability of this. However, we want to do it anyways, just to make sure it's working properly. I'm just kind of looking carefully here. You notice that these pins right here look a little shinier. It's almost as if someone has recently tried resoldering this together. So I wonder if there were previous issues on this that someone tried to repair and didn't successfully repair, or what the deal is. As well, we're going to give all of these pads just a preventative clean with some rubbing alcohol and Q-tips, just to make sure that, again, it will work for many years to come. So I'm going to grab some contact cleaner and we'll try give that switch a bit of a clean with. Okay, so I went and I picked up some contact cleaner. So let's give these switches a bit of a cleanup. So I'm just going to remove these button covers. I'm going to put them in the same order I've taken them off, just so I don't mix up where they're supposed to go. And let's grab the contact cleaner. So this cost me about $6 for the contact cleaner. You can pick it up at either an electronics store or local hardware store probably even has contact cleaner. So it's pretty straightforward. This stuff is supposed to go into the switches, supposed to evaporate and leave no residue. So all we're really going to do, spray it in, push the button a little bit, spray a little more, push the button some more. It's all evaporated and dried, so it's time to test it again. So I'm going to use my multimeter one more time, and holding down on these contacts, then push the button in. Oops. It's not really working. I was getting a little bit, but it still seems a bit off. So I'm going to try give it a little bit more contact cleaner inside here. Make sure that it's really getting in there. Like I can feel it coming out the other end of the switch, so I think there should be more than plenty in there. And hit that switch a few times, let it really work into the contacts, and we'll try it again. So we've given it another hit of the contact cleaner, and we're going to test it one last time here before I try another step. So one on each contact, push the button, and I'm not getting anything. And just to kind of show you it does work on other ones, getting continuity, oops, getting continuity and continuity. So I think we're gonna have to actually take this apart and try and repair it that way. So grab my screwdriver, and we have to remove this cover from it. So there's 2 screws on the back here. And this will just lift right off. So flip it over and get my multimeter and tools out of the way here. So we're going to flip it over, and there are 3 solder points that we need to remove. 1, 2, 3, and 4, sorry. So all 4 of these points we have to desolder in order to lift this switch off. So I'm going to start with the 2 outside ones. Actually, looking at it, no, they all need to come off. So we're going to desolder all 4 of these points here. This one up at the top, where my finger is, does not need to be removed. That goes to this, looks like this resistor here. So if you've never done desoldering before, it can seem intimidating. Doesn't have to be. You're going to need your desoldering braid. You can also use a desoldering gun. I don't have one, so the braid's going to have to work. It's good to have some extra solder around, and I like to have flux as well, so I use a flux pen. So what I'm going to do, put some flux on these contacts, grab my soldering iron. We're going to desolder those 4 points. So I'm going to start with, I put some flux on here. Actually, what I'm going to do first or second is just heat up each of these individual solder blobs. The purpose of that is just to reflow it a little, help the solder move. I'm going to put a little bit more solder on, and then grab my solder wick. So all you need to do is really lay the solder over top, or a solder wick on top, heat it up through the solder wick, and the wick should just suck up a lot of that solder. Most, if not all of it, should come up nicely. And we'll go on to the next one. Okay, so we'll take a quick look at this. There we go, we can focus kind of. So you'll see these pins right here in the middle. There's a nice ring around them, so I've removed all the solder. This one up at the top, it looks like there is still some solder that may be connecting it, so I probably have to go back. Oh, no. I was able to just move it with my fingernail, and it seems to have come loose. Same with these ones. And then this guy down here is not moving, so I'm going to need to do a little bit more desoldering. In this case, I'll just tackle it from the other side. So put that to the side. You can use a screwdriver or tweezers just to try and wiggle those pins a bit, and that helps to make sure that they're loose from the board. And then see if you can get it to lift off. And there we go. So we've removed that switch. Now we can take it apart and try and see what the actual problem there was. So to take it apart, what you're going to need is a little flathead screw driver. You can lift it and try and pry some of these pins back. You want to be careful that you don't firstly hurt yourself and break anything. And they're on there pretty good. Right, so I've successfully lifted back these little tabs on the side, so we should be able to pull this switch apart, and we can see what it is that we're working with. So what happens here, see if we can get a focus. So there's 2 parts to this. There's this little piece which slides back and forth and connects the 2, and there's these 3 little parts which are stationary. As we move this, it becomes a little worn down, so what I'm going to do is grab some very fine sandpaper and try and just buff it up a bit. So this is what I'm going to use. It's, I think, 2500 grit sandpaper, and I'm just going to fold it in half a couple of times to get a little bit of an edge and some sturdiness to it. Then, actually only in half once. We don't want to You don't want to make this little piece here too wide. So then stick it over top, just like so. Pinch it together. And give it a little bit of a sand. There we go. And now for this part, same idea, but we're just going to buff out the outside of it. So just like that. It's hard to tell if this is actually doing much or not, but I think it is. And then last thing to do before we try and put it back together is going to be give it a little bit of a clean. So I'm just using some isopropyl alcohol on a Q-tip like this. And we're going to grab the parts. I'm going to clean my fingers as well so I'm handling it. So grab those parts, wipe up all sides of it, and same with this part. It's going to be hard to actually get anything in there, so you may even want to wet the sides of that sandpaper and do it this way. There we go. So I'm going to give it a good pinch back together in the middle just so that it's not too wide and causing any problems, and then slide it back into place. So it should still be able to slide nicely, and it feels like it is. And then at this point, we figure out how we're going to put it back together. So flipping it over, we can see that the switch should be installed like this, and the pins should come out on the, if you're looking at it this way, the pins should be coming out of the top on our left. So we're going to set this up the same way. Switch, top and left. And then you just need to fold these pins back over. So once again, I'm just going to use my screwdriver and try and pin this back over. This can be a bit of a pain to do, so sometimes you need to put it on a sturdy surface like a table and really try and get it in. Alright, so I have the switch put back together here, so we're going to test it now. So in the open position, we're getting continuity. And in the closed position, oops, we're getting continuity. So looks like this switch is repaired now, so time to reinstall it, which should be easier than uninstalling it. So all you do, line up the holes, push it in nicely so it should look like it's in about as far as all the other ones. And it does. Flip it over. It's a good idea, put a little bit more flux on it. The flux helps to prepare the surfaces for heat transfer. Grab your soldering iron, tin the tip of it, which is just adding a little bit of solder to it. Helps with transferring the heat. Wipe it off and get soldering. So heat up your surface, throw in a blob of solder. So give it a once over, make sure that you have enough on there, that there's no holes in the solder or anything. And clean your tip off, you should be good. So let's try and get a good zoomed in focus here. So that looks to be all right. Always a good idea, once you're done soldering, just wipe it down with some more rubbing alcohol. So I got my Q-tip, got my alcohol. You just want to clean off the remainder of the flux on here. Flux is a corrosive material, so it can and it will eventually start corrosion. So again, now that it's installed, we're going to give it a test in the open position and a test in the closed position. That looks like a fully functional switch. So let's zoom out again. So time to start rebuilding the switches. I believe I moved all these buttons, so I probably have this order wrong. Oh, I gotta put the cover back on, so let's line up the cover. I think it went on like this. And then you got a couple of screws. All right, so I'm just going to go back quickly and double check on the order that those colors are supposed to go on. All right, so change the order in case you weren't able to tell. Yellow, orange, purple, blue is the way to go here. So let's get those switches reinstalled. Yellow, orange, purple, and blue. Just like to do one more test. Yep, in the open position it works, and in the closed position with the button on, it works. So that looks to be repaired. Give them a couple pushes just to make sure everything feels right. I'm actually going to try this one a bunch of pushes and then one more test. Still works, so safe to say that that repair is taking. So time to reassemble. Kind of just do the opposite of what we did to take this apart. So I'm going to speed through that quickly and we'll test it to make sure it works. So now that I've got this all screwed back together and ready to go, time to give it a test and show you how it works. I also did a little bit of research just to figure out how to play Super Action Baseball. So we're going to try a couple different tests on this so that I can really show that these buttons do work properly. All right, so do a little bit of a test here. Let's turn on my Colecovision. So batting, as we figured out, you just use this stick, and even though I've figured out the idea, I still haven't figured out how to actually hit the ball yet, but whatever. Oh, there we go. Killed it. All right, all the other buttons, they don't seem to do anything. So going back, we're gonna do fielding. Now, what you do here, you can hold down different buttons to move different players. So I use the stick, holding down the yellow button to move first base, holding down the orange button, move second base, purple is third base, blue's probably shortstop. Nope, the catcher for some reason. So I gotta move third base down here and throw it to one. That's a nice out. Second, throw it to third, throw it home. Oh. Now moving the outfielders, we're gonna throw it to first. Sweet. First, move in and get the out. Cool. So that works. I mean, pretty clear that these buttons now work. These buttons at the top here work as I'm able to select different games. I don't know what I'm doing here. Oh, I think this is the two-player mode. Restart that one more time. I do want to try something with this spinner. So apparently you can steal bases using this. So have to figure out which mode that is. Let's try number 3. Oh, that's still fielding. So I am comfortable with saying that this seems to work. So fortunately, again, it was a little bit, well, relatively easy, a little more involved as I had to desolder that switch to clean it up, and really it was more just tightening the contact inside the switch. It wasn't getting a good contact when you switch it, but otherwise this seems to be working. So again, I don't imagine there'll be a whole lot of you that have one of these, but if you happen to find one, hopefully this can help you open it up and figure out how to clean it up, really kind of just get it working properly again. It's a cool looking controller, but just really weird to me. Either way, that's it for today, so thanks a lot for watching, and be sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Get some notifications when I release new content. Like the video below and leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought about this. So thanks a lot again for watching, and have a good day.